The rain hammered the church roof like accusations from the sky, drowning out the organ's mournful dirge as Alex Sinclair stood frozen at the edge of the parking lot, her black umbrella trembling in white-knuckled fists. Her mother's casket gleamed inside through the open doors, surrounded by aunts and uncles who shot her venomous glares, their whispers slicing sharper than the wind. "She's not welcome here. Not after what she did to Eleanor." But Alex had come anyway, driven 300 miles from Chicago's anonymity, only to be shoved back by her own brother, his face twisted in the righteous fury of family loyalty. In that moment, as lightning cracked the heavens, she wondered if love could ever outrun the grave's cold grip. She'd always known this day would come like a storm she'd tried to outrun. Eleanor Sinclair had built her life in Willow Creek, Iowa, on the unyielding bedrock of small-town piety, Sunday sermons at First Baptist, potlucks where casseroles hid the town's juiciest sins, and a daughter she loved fiercely until that love cracked under the weight of Alex's truth. It started innocently enough, back when Alex was 20, home from her first year at the University of Iowa, bursting with stories of dorm life and that electric spark she'd felt with a girl named Riley in her lit class. Eleanor had smiled at first, chalking it up to college experimentation, but when Alex brought Riley home for Christmas, the air in their clapboard house on Maple Street turned to frost. "It's a phase," Eleanor had said, her voice brittle as old china. "God doesn't make mistakes like that." Alex had laughed it off then, but the phase stretched into years, into a quiet coming out over Easter brunch that ended with Eleanor's fork clattering to the plate, her face paling as if Alex had confessed to murder. The family fracture deepened like a fault line. Alex's father, gone too early to a heart attack when she was 12, had been the buffer, the one who'd taught her to fix engines and dream big without apology. Without him, Eleanor leaned harder into the church elders, their sermons on Leviticus echoing in late-night calls where she'd beg Alex to pray it away. Alex tried, God knows she did, nights on her knees in her tiny apartment, bargaining with a deity who seemed as distant as Willow Creek felt from the rainbow flags waving in Chicago's Boys Town. But prayer couldn't erase the pull toward women, the way their laughter lit her up like nothing else. It couldn't dim the memory of her first kiss with Riley under the stadium lights, tentative and world-shaking, or the ache when Riley left for grad school and Alex swore off love altogether. Then Jamie walked into her life at a coffee shop poetry slam 3 years ago this May. Alex was nursing a black coffee and a bruised ego after a breakup with a bartender who'd ghosted her mid-fight when Jamie climbed the stage, guitar slung over her shoulder like a shield. 26, with calloused fingers from years of strumming folk tunes in dive bars, Jamie's voice wrapped around the room like smoke, husky, unfiltered, singing of lost highways and hearts that refused to heal. Her lyrics hit Alex square in the chest. We chase the dawn in borrowed cars, but shadows tag along, whispering we're never far from breaking. After the set, Alex bought her a drink, words tumbling out in a rush she couldn't control. They talked until closing about growing up queer in cornfields, about mothers who loved conditionally. Jamie's own mom had disowned her at 17 after finding a stash of letters from her high school crush tucked under the mattress. She said I was choosing sin over salvation. Jamie had shrugged, but her eyes betrayed the scar. That night, under the sodium glow of street lamps, Alex kissed her first. Fierce, like staking a claim on the stars. Jamie tasted like whiskey and wildflowers, her hands steady on Alex's waist as if she'd been waiting lifetimes for this. They tumbled into Alex's bed, sheets tangling around laughter and gasps, bodies mapping each other with the reverence of explorers. It wasn't just sex, it was revelation. Jamie saw the parts of Alex she'd hidden, the grease-stained mechanic's overalls from her day job at a Harley shop, the sketches of custom bikes doodled on napkins, the fear that loving a woman meant loving alone forever. You're not broken, Jamie murmured against her collarbone, fingers tracing the tattoo of a phoenix on Alex's ribcage, inked after her father's death. You're the spark that starts the fire. Their love bloomed defiant, a rose pushing through concrete. Weekends spent road-tripping the Mississippi River, picnics on bluffs where they'd lie tangled, watching barges slice the water like memories. Jamie taught Alex chords on her old Gibson, their fingers intertwining over frets until songs became theirs, ballads of outlaws and outcasts, harmonies that drowned out the world's noise. Alex fixed up Jamie's beat-up Ford pickup, installing a new carburetor under the hood while Jamie sang off-key, grease smudging their cheeks like war paint. They built a life in the cracks, a one-bedroom walk-up in Wicker Park, walls papered with concert stubs and Polaroids of stolen kisses. But Willow Creek loomed like a shadow, Eleanor's calls growing rarer, laced with pleas to come home and make this right. Alex sent photos, her and Jamie at Pride, arms linked under a sea of flags, but Eleanor never replied, only forwarded Bible verses on forgiveness that felt like chains. The cancer came swift as a summer squall, diagnosed in January, stage 4 by March. Eleanor refused to tell Alex directly. It was Uncle Ray who called, voice gruff over the line. She's asking for you, kid. But you know how she is about your lifestyle. Alex dropped everything, driving through blizzards to the hospital in Des Moines, Jamie's shotgun with thermoses of soup and a playlist of Eleanor's old Patsy Cline records. The room smelled of antiseptic and wilted lilies, Eleanor's frame shrunken under starched sheets, her once vibrant curls limp against the pillow. Mom, Alex whispered, throat tight, but Eleanor turned away, eyes fixed on the window where snow blanketed the parking lot. I can't, she rasped. Not like this. Pray for me, Alexandra. Pray to be whole. Jamie waited in the hall, hand on Alex's back like an anchor, but the visit lasted minutes, Eleanor clutching her rosary, murmuring absolutions Alex couldn't grant. They tried again in April, when spring teased the edges of Iowa's thaw. Alex brought tulips, Jamie baked Eleanor's favorite lemon bars, but the hospice room in Willow Creek felt like a tomb. Eleanor's brother, Pastor Harlan, hovered like a sentinel, quoting scripture on repentance. God's grace is for the repentant Eleanor, he'd say, and she'd nod weakly, eyes sliding past Alex as if she were a ghost. Jamie pulled Alex into the bathroom, locking the door against the suffocating air. You don't owe her your soul, she said, cupping Alex's face, thumbs brushing away tears. Love isn't a debt. They left with Eleanor's silence ringing in their ears, the drive back to Chicago a blur of recriminations, Alex blaming herself for not trying harder, Jamie reminding her that some walls aren't meant to be scaled. Eleanor's death came on a Tuesday in June, the call waking Alex at dawn. Heart gave out, Uncle Ray said flatly. Funeral's Friday. But Harlan says, you're not to come. It'd upset her memory. Alex hung up, the phone slipping from numb fingers, and Jamie held her through the sobs that racked her body like fever. They can't erase you, Jamie vowed, but the words felt hollow against the void. Alex spent days in a haze, calling out sick from the shop, staring at the ceiling while Jamie worked double shifts at the record store, coming home with takeout and stories to coax a smile. Remember that time in Milwaukee, when we got lost and ended up at that drag brunch? Jamie would say, curling against her. Queen Latifah lookalike roasted us for our outfits, but we owned that runway. Laughter cracked the grief, small fissures letting light in. Friday arrived merciless. Alex dressed in the black sheath Jamie ironed that morning, her hands shaking as she clipped on pearl earrings, Eleanor's, pilfered from a childhood jewelry box. I'm going, she told Jamie, voice steel despite the tremor. Even if they drag me out. Jamie kissed her forehead, eyes fierce. Then I'll be right behind you, ready to throw hands. The drive was 8 hours of podcasts on queer history, steeling her nerves against the what-ifs. Willow Creek hadn't changed, the grain elevator silhouetted against endless fields, the diner where Eleanor waited tables in her youth, Main Street's faded awnings fluttering in the breeze. The church loomed white and stern, bells tolling like judgments. She parked at the far end of the lot, umbrellas snapping open against the downpour. Mourners streamed in, cousins she hadn't seen since grade school, neighbors with pie plates and condolences. Alex slipped toward the side door, heart pounding, but there was Tommy, her brother, broad-shouldered and red-faced, blocking the path. "Alex, no," he growled, hand on her arm like a vice. "Mom's wishes. You know what she said." The crowd parted, whispers rippling. "That's Alexandra? The one who?" Aunts clutched purses tighter, uncles averted eyes. Pastor Harlan emerged, Bible in hand, his voice booming. "This is a house of God, Alexandra. Your presence profanes it. Profanes it." The word landed like a slap, echoing the sermons of her youth. Alex yanked free, rain streaming down her face, mingling with hot tears. "She was my mother," she choked. "My blood." Tommy's jaw set. "Blood don't mean you get a pass on sin." They escorted her back to the car, a phalanx of conforming a human wall, their faces masks of pity and piety. Alex slammed the door, engine roaring to life, tires spinning gravel as she fled to the motel on the highway's edge. Jamie met her there hours later, having caught a bus after Alex's frantic text. She found Alex curled on the lumpy bed, staring at a water-stained ceiling, the remote clutched like a lifeline to numb the pain with bad TV. "Hey," Jamie said softly, kicking off boots and sliding beside her, arms enveloping the chill. "You showed up. That's more than they deserve." Alex turned into her, inhaling the familiar scent of vanilla and vinyl. "I just wanted to say goodbye," she murmured. "One last time." Jamie's fingers combed through her hair. "You will. In your way." The reading was scheduled for the next afternoon at Harlan's law office downtown, a squat brick building squeezed between the feed store and the library. Alex almost skipped it. Why twist the knife? But Jamie convinced her otherwise. What if there's something? A letter, a trinket. Closure's a bitch, but it's yours to claim. They arrived early, Jamie in a crisp button-down that hugged her frame, Alex in jeans and a blazer, hair pulled back to armor her vulnerability. The waiting room hummed with low voices, Tommy fidgeting with his keys, Aunt Lydia dabbing at eyes with a lace hanky, cousins scrolling phones to avoid the awkward hush. Harlan bustled in last, spectacles perched on his nose, the will sealed in a manila envelope like a verdict. He cleared his throat, the room falling silent as a held breath. Eleanor Sinclair, in sound mind on the 3rd of May, bequeathed her estate as follows. Assets ticked off like inventory. The house to Tommy, the savings split among grandchildren, heirlooms divvied with clinical precision. Alex tuned out, gaze fixed on a crack in the linoleum, bracing for her erasure. Then Harlan paused, unfolding a codicil with furrowed brow. "And to my daughter, Alexandra Marie Sinclair." The name hung in the air, a grenade pin pulled. Gasps rippled, Lydia's hand flew to her mouth, Tommy's chair scraped back. Alex's pulse thundered, eyes snapping up. Harlan's voice faltered, reading on. "I leave the entirety of my personal library, the quilt from your great-grandma, and the sum of $100,000, to be used at your discretion. But most importantly, I leave you my apology. I was wrong. Love is not a sin, it's the only grace we get." The room froze, time splintering like glass. Tommy's face drained of color, mouth agape, as if punched. Aunt Lydia whispered, "Eleanor?" Harlan blinked behind his glasses, the words echoing off walls that suddenly felt too close. Alex sat stunned, chest heaving, the will's pages trembling in Harlan's grip, a final act from a woman who'd spent years building barricades, only to tear them down in ink. Jamie's hand found hers under the table, squeezing with quiet triumph, her thumb tracing circles of "You are enough." In the stunned aftermath, as kin erupted in murmurs, shock, denial, an undercurrent of awe, Alex rose, legs unsteady but sure. She crossed to Harlan, taking the document with hands that no longer shook. "Thank you," she said, voice steady as the Mississippi's flow. Tommy stood, eyes wet, reaching out but stopping short. She told me not to let you in. But this?" His voice cracked, the brother she'd wrestled with in haylofts now adrift in revelation. Alex nodded, the weight of years lifting like fog. She found her way. Maybe we can too. They spilled out onto the sidewalk. Rain eased to mist, the town unfolding soft and green under a tentative sun. Jamie pulled her close, foreheads touching, breaths mingling in the space between. "Your mom came through," she whispered, lips brushing Alex's temple. "Just like you always do." Alex laughed, a sound raw and real, pulling back to cup Jamie's face. "Because of you. You make me brave." The kiss that followed was unhurried, a promise sealed in daylight. No hiding, no shadows. Cousins averted eyes, but Tommy lingered, hands in pockets, a ghost of a smile cracking his facade. "Coffee later? For old times?" Alex nodded, the bridge forming tentative, but true. That evening, they drove to the cemetery on the town's edge, gravel crunching under tires as fireflies blinked in the dusk. Eleanor's grave was fresh dug, a mound of earth blanketed in asters, the headstone yet to come. Alex knelt, soil damp under palms, Jamie beside her with the quilt from the will, patchwork of faded florals, threads worn from winters past. "I forgive you, Mom," Alex said to the wind, voice carrying over the fields. "And I love you. All of it. The mess, the miracles." Jamie draped the quilt over her shoulders, their fingers lacing as stars pricked the sky. In that quiet, with the woman who chose her every dawn, Alex felt the pieces knit. Daughter, lover, survivor. Love wasn't the absence of storms. It was dancing in the downpour, hand in hand, until the rainbow broke through. Back in Chicago, life resumed its rhythm, but richer now, colors sharper, silences deeper. Alex hung the quilt in their living room, a banner of mending, and started sketching designs for a custom bike, curves like Jamie's smile, engine purring like her laugh. They hosted a small gathering, inviting Tommy, who'd driven up unannounced, his apology stumbling over beers on the fire escape. "She wrote letters," he admitted, passing envelopes yellowed with age. "Burned most, but saved yours. Read M after the diagnosis. Changed her." Alex traced the script, elegant loops of a hand that once penned grocery lists and love notes to Dad. "I'm proud of the woman you became," one read, "even if I was too scared to say it." Jamie composed a song that summer, fingers flying over strings in their sun-dappled kitchen, lyrics weaving Eleanor's ghost into anthems of redemption. They played it at an open mic, the crowd hushed as Alex joined for the chorus, voices blending in harmony born of scars. Afterward, a woman in the front row, silver-haired, eyes kind, approached. "Reminds me of my own girl," she said, hugging Alex tight. "Lost her to the church's narrow gate. Wish I'd had your courage." The encounter lingered, a reminder that stories like theirs rippled outward, cracking walls in places unseen. Fall brought harvest moons over Lake Michigan, walks along the shore where waves lapped secrets at their feet. Alex proposed on a crisp October night, down on one knee in the sand, ring glinting, a simple band etched with phoenix flames, sourced from her shop scrap. Jamie's yes was a sob-laced whoop, pulling her up into a spin that scattered gulls. They planned a wedding for spring, small and fierce, vows under oaks in a Wisconsin glen, rings exchanged with the lake as witness. Invites went to Tommy, to Aunt Lydia, who'd sent a tentative card, even Harlan, whose reply was a stiff note but present. "Progress," Jamie teased, sealing envelopes with kisses. Winter tested them, as winters do, blizzards trapping them indoors, arguments flaring over small things like whose turn it was for dishes or the shadow of old wounds creeping in. One night, after a fight about Alex's lingering guilt over Eleanor, Jamie stormed to the balcony, breath fogging glass. Alex followed, arms wrapping from behind. "I'm sorry," she murmured. "You're my home. Always." They made up slow, rediscovering each other in the glow of string lights, bodies a language of forgiveness. Spring bloomed riotous, the wedding day dawning gold. Guests gathered, friends from the shop and stage, a rainbow quilt of kin chosen by heart. Tommy walked Alex down a petal-strewn aisle, his grip firm, eyes proud. Jamie waited in white linen, curls crowned with wildflowers, her smile the sun-breaking clouds. Vows spilled like rivers. I choose you, in storms and silences, in the bend of your laugh and the strength of your silence. Rings slid on, sealing promises, and as they kissed to cheers, Alex felt Eleanor's presence, not as judgment, but as quiet blessing, the will's echo in the wind. Years folded forward, a tapestry of firsts, adopting a scrappy mutt named Phoenix, buying a fixer-upper with a garage for Alex's bikes and Jamie's studio. Children came later, via donor and dreams, a boy with Jamie's eyes, a girl with Alex's fire, raised on stories of grandmas who learned late but loved deep. Tommy visited often, his own family softening around edges, Lydia baking pies that tasted of olive branches. The library Eleanor left became Alex's sanctuary, shelves groaning with voices queer and kind, each book a bridge to the mother she'd mourned twice, once in life, once in letting go. On the 10th anniversary of that rainy funeral, they returned to Willow Creek, hands linked over the gear shift. The church had a new pastor, one with rainbow pins on his lapel. The town square sported a subtle pride flag on flag days. At the grave, now mossy and settled, Alex laid a stone etched with love winds. Jamie sang softly, guitar acoustic in the grass, a lullaby for the woman who'd bent, but not broken. As dusk fell, fireflies rising like prayers, Alex turned to Jamie, their life a constellation of choices. "We made it," she whispered, "through the bans and the freezes." Jamie's kiss was answer enough, warm, eternal, the grace they'd claimed. And in the quiet that followed, with the world turning gentle around them, Alex knew. Forgiveness wasn't erasure, but expansion. Love, in all its wild, womanly glory, was the will that rewrote everything.